Holding on to gains galore here with the markets. Welcome back. We're continuing our Fox Business exclusive interview with BlackRock Chairman and CEO Larry Fink. Larry, just last Monday, just 2 days ago, the NASDAQ closed in a bear market, down 20% or more from its recent highs. Tech, many people say, is oversold. Do you agree with that? Do you think that tech is sort of oversold, or do you like something else? What else is oversold where you say it's cheap enough now?
I would say the overall market for long-term investors is a good entry level to get in right now. On tech specifically, people were buying growth stocks indiscriminately, and there were some that were heavily overvalued. It would have taken them years to meet their revenue projections, and I think there's just been a reassessment. I mean, you see companies like Apple that hasn't really moved because they're in a really good position, and then you see other tech companies, some of them are down as much as 75%, and that's just a reevaluation of, is that growth real or not real?
What happens when the Fed raises rates? They are supposed to raise rates next Wednesday. They say that they will be on a trajectory, a longer-term multi-rate hike movement here. What happens to those companies that are still a little frothy?
So I think in those cases they're going to continue to fall, but I think much of the Fed's rate projections is probably in the market. I think a lot of the evaluation. But I would argue today, whatever, 2-3 weeks ago, before the Ukrainian war, I would have said, the Fed was poised to raise 7 or 8 times. I don't think that's going to be the case now.
Can I just say something? I was walking around Manhattan and something unsettling happened to me. And I wasn't a homeless guy, using the sidewalk as a bathroom. But I'm walking and I see this billboard. Can you show this thing?
Oh, okay.
I mean, this literally. Do we have the billboard? Because this freaked me out. I don't think I've recovered from this.
Well, nor have I, because I don't.
Who is Larry Fink?
Yeah, I would like them to at least use a nicer picture of me. I mean, I'm not that.
It looked like Dr. Evil, and oh God, it was horrible. And it's pretty stupid when you go through the organization's literature, because I know you, and you have been a guy that's a moderate on this. You piss off, let's face it, Elizabeth Warren on one side, the other side doesn't like you, but there is an issue with ESG. You guys do it. Everybody does it.
Yes.
One of the things I think this whole Ukraine-Russian conflict exposed is that there's a lot of holes in ESG. That, it stops some of our domestic oil production. It could make us dependent on electric vehicles, where the batteries, and you and I have had this conversation, the batteries are essentially, the minerals in the batteries come from China.
Well, they come from Africa, but they're manufactured in China.
But I guess my point is, does ESG have to change? The parameters, at least, to recognize this
I think there is a role for everything. ESG is not responsible for all the ills, and it's not going to be responsible for all the successes.
Right.
I actually believe, and I'm very proud of American capitalism in the last week, and this is part of S.
Right. So environmental, social.
No, but when you see how many American companies who've walked away from their business in Russia. They did it because their employees were talking to them, their clients were talking to them. That's a great example of how we modify our behaviors. And this is the adaptability of American capitalism. 10 years ago, that would not have happened. And look at the success. We have an economic war against Russia right now, and it's much more complete than just governmental sanctions. Governments did not call people up and say, stop doing business in Russia. It was corporations doing it on behalf of their employees, on behalf of their...
But let me just press this point a little bit. And for example, McDonald's, under ESG, McDonald's can open up, and this is when Putin was still killing people, they could open up whatever they wanted to in Russia. They opened up a lot of McDonald's in Russia. ESG did not prevent McDonald's investment in Russia.
Nor should it.
But should it recognize that, I mean, for example, when I went to the NASDAQ, they have these these listing portfolios, which is kind of modeled after ESG investing. They said, okay, U.S. companies should have diversity on their boards, which is fine. That's a great thing.
Okay.
But I said, how come? And I said, well, are the Chinese going to put Uyghurs on the board of their companies? And of course, we won't. They're not. And of course, we're not going to mandate that. Isn't that a hole in ESG?
Well, I think you're building it into more than what it is. It is just a framework of evaluation of companies. And every company must do what is right for them. It is not for us or anybody to tell you what to do, but every board and management team should design a strategy, how they connect with their employees, how they connect with their clients, and importantly, how do they connect with all their communities. And that's what I believe what ESG is how to be working with all your stakeholders, and you build more durable, more successful profitability for your shareholders.
Has it become too formalized? With the proxy firms saying you got to do this?
I mean, look, we don't follow the proxy firms. Okay. This is why we built up our own corporate stewardship team. But I really believe the whole essence of what American companies are doing in the last 2 weeks really highlights this. I'm proud to say I'm an American capitalist about what is going on and how companies are navigating this. Look, I believe where we are in the energy cycle, we got the energy cycle we were too bullish on the cycle in 2015 and 16. We were too bearish on the energy cycle then. And that's just...
But Larry, obviously you love electrification. So where do you stand on, say, for example, Tesla? Do you drive a Tesla?
I don't.
What do you drive?
I intend to be buying 1 or 2 electric cars in the next 2 years as GM and Ford and other companies are rolling them out. So I drive a 10-year-old car. I have not bought a new car in 10 years.
Wow, sound like me.
Should President Biden acknowledge Elon Musk? He tends not to bring him up when he's talking about
I'm not going to talk about what anybody should say or not say, but yeah, I would say I think Elon Musk is a visionary. He transformed the auto industry, and now we have all the incumbents moving.
How do we get out of the Chinese trap with the cobalt and all the minerals that go into these?
Well, Glencore, a Swiss company, owns 45% of the cobalt. Okay, so we got to make sure that Glencore, by the way, that's a great company to be investing in right now because they're the largest miner in the Congo. But
should we be mining there? I mean, is that?
I'm not here to tell what mining companies should do. I mean, we don't do it as a government. We are. It's a private sector. I believe in the role of the private sector. Trying to find these opportunities.
In the last segment, you said that everybody's reassessing where we are too dependent on unfriendly nations like Russia. Where else do you see we are too dependent because the inflation spiral that we are seeing right now? We're getting CPI tomorrow, Consumer Price Index.
Very high.
What do you think it's going to be?
7 to 8%.
Whoa.
Not 9?
I would not be surprised. I mean, I called and I gave a speech in July to the G20 on my fears that we're mismanaging the energy transition. In July. I wrote, Charlie, you had that speech.
Yeah, great speech.
I said that inflation is out of control in July, that we have to be thoughtful about this. One of the big reasons why inflation is higher in America is 2 reasons that we don't spend enough time talking about. Over the last 10 years, we moved our economic policy. When we were all young kids, the #1 economic policy in America was consumerism. Right. Post-World War II, everything was designed that Americans can get more and more things, and we had more than any country in the world at the cheapest prices. I would say in the last 10 years, it evolved away from consumerism to jobs. The focus on jobs was more important than consumerism. But what that means, that's inflationary definitionally. If we are not if our #1 policy is not cheap prices anymore, and that is a very significant change in our global policies. And I think that's a major component of what is happening right now. And it's fine, because I think we did need to focus on jobs and American jobs. So I'm not trying to suggest that was a bad change, but what I'm trying to suggest, there comes with, with that change comes different actions. And it was very certain to us that we were going to see more elevated inflation to that.
You meet with oil companies all the time.
I talk to oil companies all the time. I meet them personally. I have one of the top 5 oil companies in the world in my office last week.
Tell us what's on their mind. What are they worried about? Are they going to drill more? Are they looking?
They're all trying to navigate how to become how to produce more oil that is not a 30-year investment or 40-year investment, but they can drill where it's successful for the next 5 or 10.
Oh,
because keep in mind, it's pretty clear that we're going to have new technology. So if you are going to have a break even in 50 years in a well, or you're going to lose money. But so it's all dependent on what is the time frame for this transition. We are going to need hydrocarbons for the next 50 years. Okay, we are still going to have technologies where hydrocarbons are still going to be heavily used. But how do we create new technologies that will substitute, hydrocarbons, and obviously solar, wind, but hydrogen is going to play a significant role.
How about nuclear?
Nuclear is, if you have a country that believes in it, like France, it plays a huge role. The regulatory backdrop for so many other countries, it's much more difficult to adapt. So it's more of a regulatory issue than anything else. I was in Abu Dhabi recently, and they built 2 nuclear plants. They're building 2 more, very small ones, and they want to be the first country in the world that is extracting oil, producing gas, green.
Lastly,
we have 30 seconds left.
Lastly, how happy are you that you didn't get the CEO job of Merrill back in 2007? How happy? Tell us.
I'm thrilled, Charlie.
Larry, one quick, we've got about 15 seconds.
Yes.
Who wins this economic war between the Allies, the U.S., and Russia?
Oh, we're going to win. I said, 100% confidence. This economic war is so powerful. We underestimate what capitalism can do when we listen to all our stakeholders. And Americans, companies, and European companies, not as much as American companies, by the way, are listening to our stakeholders, and we're responding.
It is wonderful to have you. Larry Fink of BlackRock. Charlie, thank you very much. That is going to do it for us on a big day with Rally on the Screen. Kudlow is next.